Okay, everybody, we're here with Ricardo Ruan. All of you probably remember the Angelo interview where I was talking about the first shift to non-duality, and in that story, I mentioned calling my best friend and telling him, "Bro, I entered enlightenment." So the person in that story is here now, and Ricardo and I started really our whole interest in spirituality and meditation together. Um, when we were 16, 17, we both met Chögyal Namkhai Norbu together and received the Dzogchen transmission and spent time as monks as well. So a lot of our training in the early years was actually together. And many years ago on the podcast, we had a series called R&R, which was right before the pandemic. So we're picking up where we left off, and there's lots of basic meditation questions, intermediate meditation, advanced meditation questions that we're going to be covering in this series, and we'll be expanding it from there as well. So, Ricardo, glad to be tackling this with you, man. This is going to be fun.
I know it's been a while. This has always been our number one love of our life is teaching, practicing. We've been doing it for what, I counted down the years yesterday and I was like, wow, 15 years? 15 years of
Yeah,
practicing. Then I just reflected on like, wow, I've been blessed to have these teachers and done these retreats and just my life has been a little weird, but weird in the best way possible. So, you know, it's great that we're doing this series again and going over things that a lot of practitioners may be confused on. A lot of practitioners may be kind of stuck in too. They
yeah,
feel like a lot of people, there's just these common themes throughout a person's journey that they'll get into. And most of the time, it's really, there's nothing wrong with you. It's you're going through the motion of things, or you just have a bad teacher. And you probably or a lack of teacher. So it's either you're good, you're fine, or yeah, no one's really guided you on what you need to do. So it's good to
yeah,
be.
yeah. Yeah, I think we've had the fortune and the good karma to not only have started early, but to have started early seriously,
Hmm.
right? I think that's the difference. And it's not to posture myself or you as like elevated practitioners or whatever, but there's things that you learn when you've done this for 16 years seriously. There's stuff that you learn when you've been at it for a decade and a half that is not so apparent in the beginning. And when you've been a very dedicated or serious practitioner, there's all kinds of roadblocks and things that you can pick up, like spiritual ego, for example, or the sense that you're somebody because you've been a practitioner for so long. And these are really all just egoic obscurations and problems that people will face. But one of the interesting one of the important points is that we may have been practicing meditation for many years on and off, or you can have an interest in meditation and spiritual subjects for, let's say, 40 years, right? But it's not really the degree of interest that has mattered or that matters. You may have spent a lot of my students or a lot of people that are watching this, they may have met one of the spiritual greats like earlier in their life, right? May have sat with Nisargadatta or Papaji or any of these, really big teachers. And 40 years have passed and they've wondered, why hasn't a shift occurred? And one of the things that some of these practitioners have told me is, it's almost like weird and unfair, and it doesn't make sense that, younger people take so well to meditation. So it's not the amount of interest, it's not the years that have passed where you were like listening to talks and listening to non-duality talk after non-duality talk, meditation talk after meditation talk. What counts was the actual amount of time in application and in practice. And that's what's unique about your background and my background as well, is that from very early we were immersed in pretty deep practice, probably practiced to such an extent that it was too intense for our age, you know. So, but with that, you know, you and I, we've been through the trenches really. So we can talk and answer questions from that perspective. And you and I both have said many times, like we're not sadgurus, we're not perfect masters, but we're also not new students, we're old students. So we can address things from that point of view.
Hmm. Yeah, and on that note of students have been practicing for over 40 years, and it's it's hard. I know it can be discouraging. No matter what, I always find this to be the most important. How are you doing with your actions and your morality? Is that to me is more important than you sitting down, being able to have that for 1 hour, 2 hour, 3 hour sits, non-dual experience. Because your practice is coincided with rightful action, rightful speech, rightful everything. So it may be discouraging to just sit and do this thing for many years and not get to these states of consciousness or these experiences that you would like. But most of the time, you probably have become a better person morally. And those moral applications exceed certain spiritual experience from my point of view, because now you're cultivating a side of spirituality that's just as important as your sitting practice. For some reason in this life, yeah, so far I haven't had those like experiences of non-duality whatsoever. But your experience in the worldly society, the societal's influence, you're still able to be a good person. Especially nowadays, that's we see it, people's morality really becoming, we're losing morality in society. We are. And so I'm grateful for those practitioners that have been doing it for 40 years and had the diligence for it, but also can actually act out the practice in terms of, yeah, I'm a reflection of the practice. I'm doing these rightful acts. Um, which is, it's an important beginner's question actually, because I hear it all the time, like, okay, when's the best time to meditate, or is meditating the only thing to do? Like, is that to get to these experiences, to feel no mind, to feel non-duality? Is that the only thing to do? It's not, you know, it's just,
Mhm.
sitting down is important, but also how you interact with the world is just as important.
Yeah, with uh, Buddhism is an example, or many spiritual systems, we have the emphasis on sila and on right action. And I think there's different ways to look at that. One could be, what it's like the question that Socrates was asked, right? What is virtue? And he couldn't come up with an answer, right? So we can't, so like at the relative level, we have a general understanding of what's a virtuous action versus an unvirtuous action. Like something that benefits and helps other people is considered a virtuous thing. Something that hurts and harms other people is considered an unvirtuous thing, right? But this virtue as an element is very difficult to pin down or actually define. It's always tied to relationships and behavior, and how is that important in the spiritual practice or in the search. When in discussions about non-duality, there's often like an abdication really of an emphasis on right action. In a way, it's been presented as besides the point. I mean, one of the conversations I had with Peter Brown, I said I was asking him about um, celibacy and sexual restraint in a way to build up the chi and the energy system, because I found that that was related to the first shift into non-duality. And his answer to me was, what you do has absolutely no relationship with this state. And so that's the absolute perspective.
Right.
And unfortunately, if we take the absolute perspective without having gone through relative level training,
Mhm.
then we can find ourselves in not the best situations and then justifying it through the view of non-duality.
Mm.
So to avoid that, this emphasis on right action and virtue and compassion is there in all of these systems. Buddhism, especially, there's a whole eightfold path, and there's a reason for it. And the reasons that the more wholesome your mind is, the easier it is to let go. The more burdened your mind is by unwholesomeness, the more attached and addicted you are to everything.
Yeah, it's really it's a fundamental thing. If you do bad things, you're gonna have bad thoughts. You're just that it's like a
Yeah, right.
it plagues you, and sometimes you don't know it. It's so
It's almost like it makes sense or something, you know?
common sense. And it does really affect your practice. You know, it does. If trauma can affect your practice, imagine just like the little tiny acts you do throughout the day that are really malevolent.
Yeah.
Those tiny little acts. Then you go down and sit, try to clear the mind, but you're still you have you changed as a person? You know, maybe there's your rightful action is strictly correlated with how you do things. But obviously, like you said, in the absolute point of view of non-duality, it's like, yeah, nothing matters. There's no such thing. I'm not even there. What's the
There,
thing
there,
there? You know?
there is no action. Form is emptiness. Emptiness is forms.
Yeah, and it that's the one thing that, I it is a kind of a misunderstanding of non-duality because everything's mostly talked about in that perspective. And it does make sense. Most people aren't there. But it's it's hard to be like, okay, if nothing matters, then I guess, I don't need to do anything. Um,
Yeah, I feel like that's one of the traps, or I mean, maybe putting it as a trap is too strong, but I have a friend who had lots of deep spiritual experiences like 10 or 15 years ago.
hmm,
And then because they were so profound and blown out, he really just, he had that understanding that nothing really matters. But you can say nothing really matters, like nothing really matters, and it's a kind of way to discard reality and discard life. And then you can say nothing really matters in a form of openness.
hmm,
So it depends on the tone and the approach, right? And in his case, he's actually told me many times, he's like, if you still have the drive and the calling to do spiritual work and to practice and to meditate, then you have to capitalize that on that, because as you get older, that drive goes away. And if it goes away too prematurely, then you find yourself wasting a decade just being busy with life, when the whole time it would have been put to better use if you were living in a more contemplative way. So yeah, I think there's a lot. There are all kinds of assumptions in non-duality and assumptions in the field of awakening that um, can be detrimental or can really sidetrack practitioners. You know, a lot of part of the process or part of the search, it seems that at some point you let go of the identity of being a practitioner, right? You let go of the practice. You stop trying, you stop doing, you really stop using your mind. I mean, that's the essence. You surrender to God and you let a higher power, you could say, begin to steer the ship of your life. The thing is, if if that total abandonment of self and of spiritual practice is done prematurely, then what you find is that you just return to your ordinary life with the same amount of distraction you had before you had learned any of this, with the same habits you had before you had learned any of this, with no increase in your level of awareness and really no increase in your understanding and wisdom, and therefore no realization. It's one thing if you've tasted the fruit or you've tasted the salt and then you let it all go and you hand over the wheels to the higher power. But if that's done prematurely, you just end up in the same habits, the same mental fixations, and the same problems that existed before.
Yeah. I this reminds me of a story of there was a guy that I knew. He was very spiritual, but we were young. I was like 18 at the time. And he would use psychedelics a lot. And then within, I don't know, he just got really, really, really into the psychedelic world. And then I remember one day he was like, I'm so enlightened after all my experiences. I'm so non-dual. I can do heroin. This is an extreme case.
How'd that go?
And yeah, several years later, I saw him panhandle off the side of the freeway. But that's just an extreme case. It just you know, if that could happen to him, you'll live an ordinary life still, like you said, and you won't change. Nothing had happened to you actually because it was so premature. Nothing expanded. Um, which goes to kind of like a question that's always asked is, how do I know I'm meditating right?
Hmm. That's a really, yeah.
How do you know? As what I usually tell my students is that in the beginning, your mind, as long as you're cultivating awareness, and what is awareness, right? It's a different state of consciousness. That state of consciousness grows. In the beginning, many practitioners have a bunch of thoughts. Great. That's good. See those thoughts. You're finally watching your mind as it is, and that layer of perspective, right? People get discouraged. Oh, I'm not meditating right. I see so many thoughts. I'm not emptying out the mind. But no, you actually took the time to sit down and now you're watching the mind. That's you're doing it right in the beginning. And then later on, you're still in the beginner's mind. You're still doing the same practice. Nothing's changing. You're still practicing, but the experience of the practice changes. Meaning, maybe thoughts become less. Maybe there's states of emptiness. Maybe things light up. A light, maybe an hour of emptiness. I don't know. It's ever changing, but your body's relaxed, the mind's relaxed, and you're watching everything unfold.
Hmm.
So, how do I know if I'm meditating right? As long as is your body relaxed? Are you watching? Are you continuously going back to whatever meditation you're doing if you get distracted? Um, if you tense up, if you notice tensing, that's something that's a clear, obvious thing that is happening to your body. You're focusing too hard, something's stressed out, you're putting too much pressure on yourself. Oh, I need to empty out the mind. So you force the mind to try to empty, and it becomes a rat race of I'm using the mind to stop the mind, but it's now you're going around and around and around. Um, but yeah, those are like some things you can notice. Is my body tensing up? Is my somewhere in my face tensing up? Am I am I am I relaxed in the practice right now? And also just let things be as it is. Just don't there's no point to force anything. It's all right. Like if I have thoughts this meditation, it's okay.
Right. Yeah, I think the markers. So I'm going to present a paradox here. Like on one hand, you don't want to be. On one hand, it's best to just not be concerned about the outcome. Right. The point is to actually just sit. So not having an attachment to the outcome, and while while you don't want to be wasting your sits, like you don't want to just be spending your sits ruminating on the past or the future or how you didn't do this and you didn't do that. If your mind's doing that, then you're likely not with the meditation object, or you've got you've become distracted from awareness and from presence, and that's going to happen. But if it's something that you're permitting, then that's something you want to avoid. There's a difference between involuntary mental processing, involuntary mind wandering, and then letting yourself go into these fantasies. You want to limit that, mitigate it, or altogether give it up when you're sitting. So the idea is that while you want to be aware of awareness, the duration of awareness increasing, your equanimity increasing, and the big one, the primary one, is the decreasing of craving. So the decreasing of attachment to the practice, attachment to outcomes of the practice, attachment to where you think you are in the practice. The idea is to essentially just die into the present moment and just let this be exactly what it is. You're going to think this about it, you're going to think that about it, and the point is to just let this reactive mind do what it's going to do without taking it seriously, and just watching it, just being an observer. And that observation, that awareness, is what increases the equanimity, enlightenment factor, and really all the different path factors. And you and I will discuss those in this series. But on one hand, you do want to be sure that you're not just wasting your time fantasizing in meditation.
Hmm.
On the other hand, the notion of progress itself can be a burden for many practitioners, right? This is one of the criticisms that J. Krishnamurti had of meditation, is that because it's so goal oriented, it keeps you in time. That's one criticism. The other criticism was that meditation is state specific. It has a state specific orientation. Oftentimes, it's aimed at states of samadhi, whereas the natural state of this moment is ever present. It's just immediate. This is what it is right here, right now, right? The Really the rebuttal to that, because this is a common thing you hear in non-duality, that there's a rejection of meditation, and J. Krishnamurti certainly rejected meditation. Um, the the rebuttal to that criticism is that although these samadhi states, or these states of concentration or collectedness of mind, although they're temporary and they're born of conditions like meditating a lot, being in a retreat, they have the result, or they have the faculty of really allowing you to actually experience a quiet mind, to actually experience moment to moment presence, to actually experience equanimity, to really touch the enlightenment factors. If you don't, the problem with just listening to non-duality talks is that unless you actually sit down and do this stuff, you're not going to touch the path factors that are being discussed or being talked about. If you might get lucky because you happen to have the karma to receive a transmission when you're in the presence of a teacher, and then things open up, right? But then what do we find? And what have you and I both heard in our careers as teachers? Why did the state go away? I had an opening and then it disappeared. What happened? Where'd it go? If there's insufficient training in practice and there's insufficient understanding of the state itself, of course it will go.
Hmm. I mean,
Of
it's
course.
really good that the person even felt it. I mean, that's like I'm like that. It's like, wow, I felt this. But just as like you continue practicing, it's just another like, oh, it's there. Let's see how long it'll last. If like there's no attachment to it. It's like, yeah, I got this transmission. Okay. If it goes away, it goes away. You just continue with your practice, you know? Um, and
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
it's just as your your practice, your growth is growing, like you're growing a plant, you're giving sunlight, you're giving nutrients. There's a certain point it's going to go by itself. That's you letting go of the progress of the labeling of everything. It's going to grow on its own, in its own way, in its own what it's just going to be by itself. You cannot control it at a certain point. It's going to grow however it wants. Maybe one season it's bad, another season it's going to grow even tenfold. That's how your practice is. You don't know at a certain point. You can't control it. What you can control at a certain extent is, okay, I'm still going to give it water, sunlight, water, sunlight. That's your practice. I'm still going to do this practice. And whatever happens, I'm letting it go. I'm just going to see whatever, whatever happens, happens. That's the beginner's mind. That's how you know you're doing it right. Obviously, people strive to, I'm started meditating because of trauma. I'm meditating because I have so many thoughts. I'm meditating, everyone has a goal to it, which is it's great in the beginning. I started meditating because I had trauma, I had these things, whatever. At a certain point, um, it eventually you let that go. But what most people do is, oh, they have another goal for it. Oh, I want to become enlightened. I want this. I want that. I want spiritual experience. So now you have another goal.
Right. And it just doesn't end.
Yeah, yeah. You haven't reached that yet. Oh, I want to be more. It's goal oriented, goal oriented. There's a reason why there's such thing as beginner's mind. Just just be humble about your practice. Just give it. Just do it. And even notice your goals. Your goal is going to end up in your when you go into practice. Oh, I'm seeing my desire to become enlightened, or I see this projection of me, what that looks like. That'll come up.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, it's all projective. It's all constructive nature of the mind. It's all and it's all right.
Fabrication.
Yeah, it's okay. It's all right. There's nothing wrong with it. That's what the last thing is. It's okay that you have these things. In the mind, in that realm of awareness, there's nothing that's bad. The moment you make it bad, it's gonna start to stir the pot of the mind. It's gonna make you more agitated. You may not meditate correctly after. Whether you have a bad thought, a good thought, blissful, non-blissful, malevolent thoughts, spiteful thoughts, in that realm of meditation, as long as you're not trying to play with the thoughts, everything's fine. It's okay that these things come up. Like I said, in when you're growing a plant, there's seasons that it's bad. Do we consider that like, oh, there's a bunch of rain and it was been cold, this plant isn't growing. that's natural. It's just that's a natural phenomenon that happens. In the mind, it's the same thing. Oh, like it's okay. Like it's just I don't consider that bad sits. It's just yeah. I didn't I didn't know that this thing came up, but it did, and it's okay.
But we could have this as a last question that I'll ask you because it's it's important. It's related to what you just said. How did you? I mean, one of our teachers told you in your early days that you had this thing called spiritual greed. How did you overcome spiritual greed?
Yeah, I remember I remember just like when he first told me that, I was just like, what? I couldn't even comprehend that. Like me, this young, I think I was 20 at the time, this young 20-year-old who was a Buddhist monk, who's been meditating for 5 years already. Me? Spiritual greed? Um, but yeah, like once he told me that, you really do reflect on the side of you. Yeah, this spiritual ego, because that's a part of it. It's like, okay, I have spiritual greed. I did desire what's in the text. Oh yeah, I wanted enlightenment. I wanted psychic abilities or whatever. I wanted to read people's minds. It was hard. It was hard because again, I was really young. I was really young at the time and I didn't understand certain meaning within the text. Yeah, you should strive on for things in your practice, but I held it on too strong and I was playing this identity of a monk even when I wasn't a monk. I was acting out an ascetic life as a normal person in society. And so this greed, this whole story of, oh yeah, I'm still a Buddhist. I'm I'm doing these practices and I'm making up this whole image of myself. And yeah, because I have these things, I desire this. I want this. I'm doing this. Because I meditate so much, I'm going to get this. Because I'm meditating so much, I'm going to experience this. And what ended up happening was because I was meditating a lot young and I was going on this path, all of a sudden this identity started to overcome me. I stopped having certain experiences. I stopped having
Right.
these moments of clarity. That projection clouded me so much. The mind's tricky. The mind that's is just it's a trickster. And so that's what it did. And so him even telling me you have spiritual greed, it cleared things up and I started to really let go of, okay, maybe who knows, maybe in this path I wasn't supposed to get enlightened. Maybe in this path I wasn't supposed to have psychic abilities or these experiences, and that's okay. It's okay. Obviously later on, once it started to really transform and change, my meditation got a lot better. It just became more simple. Just simple. Keep things simple. Are you doing meditation right? Just keep things simple. It's not there's nothing complicated about it. So,
Yeah, the seasoned practitioner eventually has this. If they've departed from beginner's mind, then they eventually return to it, you know? That's that's really the thing the uh yeah. It's actually only seasoned practitioners that don't have beginner's mind. Because all the great teachers say every moment is beginner's mind, every moment is fresh, every moment is new, you know.
mm,
So, but yeah, I think this is good. I think we can end it here. And for the next our next episode, we can open with the question of um for you personally, what's something that you learned kind of in like the 10-15 year range of your practice that was not was not at all on the map in the first 5 years. because a lot of the people that are watching these videos, they're in the first 5 years of their practice. And what I've found to be the difference often between people that are just starting and people that have some degree of stable awakening and access to states or whatever is if it's not the person who's lucky, because there's always those people and they don't count. You can't count the lucky people. but besides the lucky people, there's usually a couple thousand hours of meditation between between those groups.
Yeah.
And that's not to like throw a behemoth. It's not to throw an elephant at the people that are listening to this. It's not to say that it's never going to happen or anything like that. Like God is ever present. Like it's right here, right now. But when you have done 2,000 hours of noticing it, that does something to you as opposed to not having had 2,000 hours of noticing this.
Mm.
Yeah.
Also, mudita. If a person gets
Mudita.
lucky, if a person gets lucky, oh, I want them to have more luck. Have them
Kar-
simultaneous joy.
Karuna. Mudita. Pekka.
Yeah.
Yeah, man.
Anyways,
Okay.
this was
All right,
awesome.
everyone. Hope you enjoyed this, and you'll see us back here next week. Thanks, Ricardo.